Welcome back to HBCU Game Day. We are here to preview week 3 of the football season. I am Symone Stanley, joined by Wilton Jackson. And Wilton, we learned a lot from week 2.
We did. We learned a whole bunch. We said we would learn this much, though. We said we would learn a lot heading into week 3.
Week 2 really separated the contenders from the pretenders. And I think one of the biggest storylines is Jackson State getting a decisive win over Southern University on the road, showing that even though after that loss to FAMU, they are still a contender in the SWAC and in HBCU football overall. And I think the biggest thing we learned from that Jackson State game was that Jason Brown is still QB1.
Absolutely. And you know, Coach Taylor said that, you know, in last week's press conference that Brown was going to be the quarterback, and rightfully so. He earned that spot. He played well. I was a little nervous, not going to lie, watching them play in that first half, but things started to come along. But I think the biggest thing that helped Jason Brown was obviously the running attack. You're talking about a name that we've said the last 3 weeks, Irv Mulligan. And then you talk about it, the introduction of a running back like Desmond Moultrie. That rushing attack will be Jason Brown's best friend. I can guarantee you that. Because without that rushing attack, Jason Brown is not the same quarterback. And I think that we have seen that not only we saw how well he played in that very first game against South Carolina State, but obviously we see against, you know, FAMU, that defensive pressure. They didn't necessarily have that same rushing attack like they wanted to, or at the same clip in that first game. And so getting that rushing attack going against Southern made a big difference in helping Jason Brown feel more comfortable in that game.
Another thing we learned from that game is that FAMU's defensive line and their pressure pack that they have up front is serious, because we saw what a different game Jackson State was able to play under less pressure against South Carolina State and against Southern.
Absolutely. And you're talking about a FAMU team that nearly came away with, you know, a couple plays going here and there. You know, could have potentially came away with a win against an AAC opponent in USF. But you can't win a game with 5 turnovers. And, you know, and it's like Coach said, for FAMU, you can not only can you not win a game with 5 turnovers, but more so than anything, getting back to the basics and the discipline of football. Like a lot of the things that FAMU struggled with, they were self-inflictions, things they could have fixed, you know, obviously either coming into that game. Obviously, you can't necessarily fix things. You obviously you practice a certain type of way, but at the same time, you have to practice in such a perfect way that when you get to the game, that the game is nearly perfect. Obviously, we know there's not going to be a perfect game, but at the same time, you play the way that you practice. So, you know, coming into practice, getting there on time, things he mentioned in this week's press conference, I think that was the difference. But I will say, and I set up, like I said, I set up with you and Steve on that first show, and I said FAMU's defense was different. I said that. I explicitly stated that their defense and that defensive front was going to be different, and now we're seeing it.
Okay, so we know now that Jackson State is a contender. They're in the contender category. Southern, though, they were just in the SWAC championship game. They're now 0-2. They're kind of looking like some pretenders. Let's see, week 3, they're going up against Alabama A&M University. Alabama A&M coming in this game 1-1. It's people coming for Southern's coach. It's people coming for Southern's quarterback. I hate to use the term or the phrase. I really hate this phrase, so I hate that I have to use this. But it's given must win for Southern.
Oh, absolutely. I think, you know, Southern has a fan base that if you're not winning, you know, you're not going to stick around too long. And, you know, Coach Eric Dooley, I like him. He's a great coach. But right now he's struggling. His players are not playing up to the capability of that we've seen Southern do. Like I said, you just mentioned this is the same team that made it to the SWAC championship a year ago. That was very competitive, but you know they're getting an Alabama A&M team coming off of a big win this past weekend, so they're not going to get a slouch coming into Mumford Stadium. In terms of adjustments, Southern's going to have to make some adjustments on offense. Obviously, Harold Blood is going to have to be more consistent in the game. And give kudos to Jackson State's defense for making it very hectic against them, especially more so in that second half of that game. And so when you think about that, they got to be able to put points on the boards and force 3 and outs. And granted, usually in most years, Southern has been a team that's able to run the ball. I mean, in some certain instances, you've seen where they've been able to run the ball and like the play of their running back in Kendrick Rhymes. But like pretty much when you look at that Jackson State tape and what Jackson State was able to do to them, in that game, like Southern's offense was just not clicking the way it would normally click. And not only was it this game, but go back to the Alabama State game. Alabama State, neutralized them in such a way as well. So I don't know what it's going to take for Harold Blood and Eric Dooley to get on one accord. But if not, we might be talking about a coaching change in Southern here pretty soon.
Yeah, it's looking really rough in the Bayou. But where it's not looking rough is Baltimore, Morgan State University. They are the number 3 team in the HBCU game day week 3 staff poll, and the Bears are facing Towson University. So last year, Towson won 29-21, but this is an even better Morgan State team this year. So let's talk about that matchup. I'm gonna give you guys some stats. It's really the defense that has really been carrying Morgan State so far this year. Their defensive lineman Elijah Williams currently leads the MEAC in sacks. He has 4, and he's also leading the MEAC in tackles for loss, 4 there as well. So they have the pressure up front. They also had 3 interceptions last week in their loss to Akron. The defense kept them in that game, but the offense just could not capitalize. What are you expecting from the Bears in this battle of Baltimore?
Symone, I will say, I have to say this first, and you couldn't have said it any better. Morgan State's defense is legit. That's going to be the key to them, for the most part, winning this game. But outside of that, they have to limit turnovers. You're talking about a quarterback that they have in Deuce Taylor. He threw 2 interceptions, and then also Dominique Anthony threw 1 of them. Like, you're not going to win a game with multiple turnovers. And then you talk about that fumble, right? Like, you have all momentum. You were trailing 17-7 at halftime. You get 2 scores in the third quarter, and you managed to get the ball back with the opportunity to win a game. And the running back, J.J. Davis, like him a lot. You fumble the ball. On those type of plays, on those drives, you have to have complete ball security in terms of trying to win the game for your team. This would have been a huge win for Morgan State. But I think they use this as a learning lesson. And I don't think that Morgan State is going to lose this game. This is a different Morgan State team that we've seen in different years. And like I just mentioned, the defense is going to be the key and the main anchor as to why I think they're going to get this win against Towson.
All right, so that's a good matchup there. Like we said, they just barely lost to Towson last year, just barely lost to Akron last week. This game is a big game for them to be able to snatch an upset win over Towson University. Now, staying in the MEAC, we have, who is the real HU? Is it Howard University? Is it Hampton behind me? I don't know yet. If us having these teams in the back is good luck or bad luck, we'll find out. But Hampton is loud and proud back here. So we'll see if it's good luck in the HBCU Game Day studio. But Hampton won the game last year, 31-28. It's Howard's offense, though, that has really been cooking this season. Quentin Williams is averaging 200 passing yards per game with 5 touchdowns, 0 turnovers. We're talking about a lot of these quarterbacks, gunslingers. A lot of passing yards, but some of them balls is going to the defense, but that's not the case with Quentin Williams. And Hampton's defense is looking really leaky. So far, over 2 games, Hampton has given up 62 points in 2 games. If Quentin Williams is on fire, I don't see how Hampton gets out of that one. And we got some Howard love in the back. So I guess that means Howard is good. Howard getting some extra love.
Symone, I'm with you on that. I definitely think this is about to be a change in tide in what we see in this matchup for the real HU. I think Howard gets it done this year. But I know you put a lot of emphasis on Quentin Williams, and obviously he's thrown 5 touchdowns, no interceptions this game. Obviously no interceptions this season, but we would need to see more of that in this game against Hampton. But also, let's not forget about Howard's rushing attack and what they've been able to do. You're talking about a rushing attack with, Casey Hawthorne, second in the MEAC in rushing yards, Ian Wheeler, Jared Hunter. They're also both top 10 in the MEAC in terms of rushing yards. So this is a team that not only can Quentin Williams sling it and make plays, they have a strong rushing attack to go along with that, which I definitely feel like will help them get this particular win against Hampton. But as you also said about Hampton is not coming into a game where they're limited on offense as well. You're talking about a team that at one point, you're talking about a Hampton team that, they have a quarterback in Chris Zellis and 2 running backs that can really get after it as well. So when you think about that, it's like, okay, the main things that have kind of hurt Hampton, especially last week against Norfolk State, is more so their inability to convert on third downs. But they also, had those key turnovers. So like you have to really, again, I keep saying this, maximize, and limit the turnovers, and you have a chance to, to help your team win. But I definitely think, I just truthfully believe that Howard has the better team this year. But I think the biggest key in which team wins this game is who wins the battle of the trenches and which team limits turnovers the most.
Okay, well, the theme of week 3 is battles. We have the Battle of Baltimore, the Battle of the real HU, and we have the battle for keeping jobs with Eric Dooley and Harold Blood. So let's see who wins these battles week 3. I am Symone Stanley. He is Wilton Jackson. This is HBCU Game Day. Thank you guys so much for joining us.